At InDigital, we know that public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only I3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
Here in Greenville County, we have 8 different places where a 911 call can be answered.
It is the largest county in South Carolina. It's a challenge.
The type of information that a telecommunicator gets from Radius Plus is location-based technology. You can see where the caller is, if they have a medical issue, if they speak a different language. They're immediately able to text to that caller in their native language. It reduces response times because it immediately gets first responders where they need to be.
Carbyne, it's multimedia. You can get text, translate to whatever language, getting away with the legacy equipment and going into a cloud-based solution.
It's the first time in U.S. history that we have an EZNet through cloud-native call handling.
As a police officer, to have the victim go video, that's unheard of.
You're getting upgrades every month, not every year.
To schedule your free Carbyne demo, please visit carbyne.com/WTT.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This is going to be episode 447. And you know what's interesting is that the next episode that's coming up, I'm pretty sure I set it out of order because I had to change it. I had to change it on the fly to episode 448. And that's going to be with Ashley, who's the founder of the Raspy Dispatcher. So if you hear it and you hear me say 447 twice, my bad. Sometimes that happens. But again, this is episode 447. This is going to be a lot of fun. And this episode is sponsored by InDigital as well as Rapid Deploy and Carbyne. And this is an exclusive Carbyne episode. And a big shout out to patrons. As always, thank you for everything. I wouldn't be able to do what I do if it wasn't for all of you, but especially those that are here right now watching, listening, supporting, and also, those who are listening on their favorite podcast app. Thank you all so very much. This has been a great experience, and I can't thank you enough for the support. We've got a lot of stuff going on. We already went through the National NENA Conference. We've got National APCO coming up, and actually other state conferences in between there and afterwards going into the fall. And there's already speaking spots going into the fall and actually into 2023. So things are ramping up fast. But it's been really good. And by the time this one goes out, actually, I think there's going to be some other virtual events that have already happened. We've got the Dispatchers Roundtable that goes out there, and there's going to be a new episode 30, that's going to be coming up, as well as the Media Partner Spotlight with RQI. That's coming up as well. And we recently added SiriusXM Connected Vehicle Services as a media partner sponsor as well. So thank you very much for that. And we'll be doing some stuff with them at APCO and further. So a lot of good things going on for Within the Trenches Media, but also for Within the Trenches podcast, Open Mic Live, Imagine Listening, all of it. It's been awesome. So I'm excited today for this episode, and we already had a blooper in the beginning. I won't go through it, but we had a blooper in the beginning, and it was hilarious. Maybe I'll talk about it on open mic another time, but I always like to break the ice with guests that I haven't had a chance to speak to right away, and this one was a good one. So maybe I'll fill you in sometime, but it was excellent. So my guests today are Erin and Tom, and they are dispatchers with Stamford Emergency Communications out of Connecticut. Yo, yo.
Hey,
Hello.
thanks for having us.
Yes, no, thank you for being on here, and just the stories that you're going to share, and everything else, but especially for the job that you both do. And so I want to jump in here really quick, and get started learning more about the both of you before we get to this big story that we're going to be sharing here as well. So to start out with, Erin, how did you get involved in public safety? How did you get involved in dispatching? Do you both come from a family of public safety, or did you just kind of fall into it?
So sort of fell into it, but also our family is very big in military.
Hmm.
And I also have an aunt who works for the Milford Police Department. She started as a dispatcher and is now a stenographer for them. So I would always kind of just love her stories from the dispatch side, where you got to kind of know everything, but not really be out in the streets. So from kind of about the age that I was 16, I kind of wanted to get into it. So when I was 21, I applied and I got the job.
And that's pretty interesting, because there've been there've been a good amount of folks that I've spoken to who have said that early on in age, they were around family who were involved in law enforcement or the military or anything like that, and they caught the bug right away. And a good friend of mine out of South Carolina, he told me a story where his father was the chief of police, and this was like years and years ago, where they were taking calls and listening to radio traffic in his home. Like, that's how long ago it was. And as a kid, he remembered listening to a lot of the traffic that was going on and stuff, and really picked up the bug that way as well. So, in the same sense for you, hearing these stories and everything, I mean, can you think back and just kind of remember, like, you're listening to these stories and just, wow, just like that feeling?
It was a little bit of a wow, and it was also kind of like the curiosity side of I get to know everything, but I don't actually have to be out on the streets talking to everybody, but I
Hmm.
still get to know everything going on in the town.
So did you end up well, actually, hold on, let me ask this first then. Because you mentioned knowing a lot of the stuff that was going on in town. Was it ever weird, just in a sense, because you're living in an area where this stuff is going on, and some of these stories, and let's just say, for example, it's a family member or a friend or something like that, and you see them and like something happened, and you really can't say anything, right? So
Yep.
was it ever weird?
It was weird because it's kind of one of those, if you're not in this job, you don't realize what happens in the town. So to
Yes.
kind of hear how many calls are going on, you're like, oh, I didn't even know. Like, I'm so oblivious the fact that these things are happening 24/7. So it was weird in that aspect, but then it was also nice because I knew everything before the media.
Oh, that is funny. It was the same for me working in the county that I grew up in, because the west side of the county, I pretty much knew everyone, and I knew like all the landmarks. Like, someone gave me one landmark, I could tell them, five different ways how to get there or get away from there. But
Hmm.
also, if I took a phone call from a family member or a friend, for me, if it was a family member, depending on the call, of course, I would say that it was me, and they found comfort in that. Their whole tone changed. They were comfortable with
Hmm.
the call. However, if it was a friend, I would never say my name, only, or who I was, really, because I was always afraid that if I did, there's that fine line. So one of two things is going to happen: either they're going to find comfort just like a family member, or they're not going to say anything anymore, because now they're going to be embarrassed because their business, right?
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah, so it was it was always something, but it was also interesting to be able to kind of know some of that information, like you said, before the news media, or also, the media puts it out there and you're like, that's not exactly how it happened, but you don't say anything, but
100%.
yes, but you get to know that little bit of the behind the scenes.
Yes. And it was just like nice, like, that's not exactly accurate, but okay.
Now, when you started to get into it and everything, and you went into your interview and such, I mean, what was that even like? And the reason I ask is because the interview process is a big thing. There's a lot of people on social media who will ask, "What is the interview process like? Like, what am I getting into?" And for me, I had two different big experiences where one so when I moved back to Southwest Michigan, there was two different counties, two different central dispatches that I was trying to get into. One was the one that I grew up in, another one was a neighboring agency. And the neighboring agency, part of that training, or part of the interview process rather, was a 6-person panel interview that lasted almost 3 hours. It was just me and 6 people on the other side hammering the hell out of me with questions, and I'm just, what? Where the other one, the county that I ended up working for, the county that I grew up in, it was 2 folks there, and I did the interview. I had a written test and background, and that was it. There was nothing else. So for you, what was that interview process like?
So what's interesting is they're both completely different. So I started in Milford and now I'm in Stamford.
Mhm.
And so Milford, it was an application. There was no testing at first. It was just an application. So I filled out an application, was told I was ranked number 2. And I was like, oh man, like I was actually devastated. I wanted the job so bad. I was devastated.
Mhm.
And then it was about 3 months later, I was told, okay, that person didn't work out. Like you're up next. I had to go in for an interview, like you said, for your first one, in a panel, except my panel was all sworn officers and all high rank. So I went in and I was absolutely petrified. Like I didn't know what I was walking into, but it was a big long conference table of 5 or 6 sworn officers from deputy chief all the way down to a sergeant. And I was so scared. The good news is that they told me that they didn't know how scared I was, that I actually rocked the interview. But I'm pretty sure I left that interview and like started laughing so hard I was crying because I was holding in nerves for a solid 45 minutes.
Oh, that is awesome, because yeah, when you get in there and you see everything that's going on, there's nothing else you can do but laugh.
Yep.
After you leave or whatever, because if you don't laugh, you cry. And
Exactly. Yep. Yep. I needed to release the 45 minutes worth of nerves. I thought I was even holding my breath. Like I was so nervous. It felt like I can't even fully describe it, but I remember leaving and I didn't know what to expect. And I knew
Mhm.
I was going in for a police department, but it was weird because I guess I wasn't fully prepared to be interviewed the same way they do police officers. And their testing itself was also very rigorous. Like I had to still go through like the psych eval and all of that. So then I remember getting nervous and thinking they were going to make me do the polygraph too. I
Yeah.
was like, oh God, like I've already done all of this, but luckily it was everything but the polygraph. But the panel to me was good enough of a polygraph.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because then, you go in for the polygraph, or if you had rather, and you're so nervous. For me, I would have been like, "Yeah, good luck, and good luck to me as well. But you're probably going to ask me my name. I'm going to tell you the truth, but I'm probably going to fail it because that's how nervous I am right now."
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh man. So, and before we get to Tom here, so you end up going through this, you get in there. Did you have a chance at all to do like a sit along to see what it looked like in there?
Nope, I got no sit along for the dispatch side. It was just the interview, and then if I passed the interview, I had to go through all their other steps. And then it was okay. Here's your day one. Come on in.
What?
Yep.
Man. Okay, so one last question before we go to Tom and hear how he got into this as well. Um so that first day, you're walking in. What is it that you see? Just to kind of paint the picture for those who are listening and watching right now. You're walking in, and what is it? You see a bunch of consoles, you see a bunch of screens. Were you overwhelmed? Were you nervous?
So I was nervous, and it was before they did a complete reno job of their dispatch center. So at the time it was police only, and it was only 2 people at the same time. So you were 2 people to do phones, answer the phones, answer the radio, enter stuff into the system. But also if the sergeant wasn't there, you had to go to the front desk. So I walk in and it's an old school system with all those like little push buttons and like the big microphone, and it looked like a spaceship. Like the consoles looked like Star Trek spaceship type stuff. And I remember being so intimidated of how am I supposed to remember what all of these buttons do? How am I supposed to do any of this? And they just kind of throw you right into it. But I remember that what broke the ice for me was there was a button and they said, in order to transmit, you push the red button. And I was like, I got so excited about that. So I was like, you never get to push the red button. What do you mean?
Yeah.
And it was like the best icebreaker ever. And it kind of just settled my nerves a little bit just to be able to make a joke like that.
Oh man. So I know exactly what you mean about that red button, because at every console, because we did fire, police, EMS as well, and so we had a radio that every single one. But on main law enforcement radios, that red button, that damn thing, it would stick. It would sometimes stick. So we would press it, and repeat whatever, and then you'd let go. And then, so, yesterday, it was the craziest shit, man. And, you're saying stuff, and then, it's like asteroids, like, the old Atari game is just popping up on my screen. I'm like, what the hell's going on? And it just says, open mic, open mic, open mic, open mic. And you go, because you don't know, what you've said so far. And then maybe it went over. So then what we would do sometimes is we would start slamming that button to try to unstick it. And one time that I remember specifically, one of my coworkers was just hitting it hard. And I thought, I can hear the keyboard crying right now because you're beating the shit out of that keyboard. And it finally unkeyed, because like on the screen, it shows red when it's open, and then it finally went away. And one of the officers keys up and it just goes, doo-doo, Central, is everything okay up there? And we're like, doo-doo. Yeah. Sorry, like 10-4, leave us alone. Like, yes, we had a moment. Oh man, no, I know that feeling as well, going in there and seeing everyone, because you're seeing folks that have been doing it for a while. Even if they're a year or so in, they look like they're kicking ass and taking names, and sure enough, they are. And you get that moment where you're wondering, can I do this? Because I'm watching someone right now who's doing multiple things, and they have only 2 arms, but it looks like they've got 8. They look like an octopus right now because they're doing everything and eating at the same time. How are they doing this? It's the craziest thing. So you were there. You were there at your first agency for about a couple of years, right? And then you ended up transferring over. This was about 2011, and a few years later, Tom comes into the picture as well. Now I have to ask, which one is older? Who's the oldest?
I am.
You are? Okay.
Yeah.
So how did this come about, Tom? That you obviously, you're here in the same place. Was it just a conversation with Erin and everything? Like, hey, you should try this out. You might dig it. How did this come about?
So I was growing up, kind of like we talked about before with you, I never really thought public safety, specifically dispatch, was going to be something I was going to do in my life. I was in the military. When I got out, I was going to college to be a radiologist with the GI Bill. And it was around that time the government shutdown kind of messes up the GI Bill a bit. So it was like just job hunting. Out of like 1 month, I'm going to school. The next month, it's going scouring the papers, trying to find anything I could. That whole time, though, my sister had been talking about dispatch for years, and it always sounded interesting, but like just so foreign to anything that I thought I was gonna be into. And so one day she goes, "Hey, there's an opening. Come on down. Come through the interview process." Luckily, I got the scoop on that process, so it wasn't as bad for me. She's like, "All right, this is what you say. This is what's gonna happen. Be here at this time." So it's like I got the whole lowdown, and so I go down. Luckily, my prior experience, and they needed the body, so I got hired. But even with everything she had told me and all the stories, I don't think anything could prepare you for when you walk in that first day and you see it actually happening.
Yeah, for sure. Someone can tell you in so much detail. It's just like training, right? You can train for every situation, but when that situation happens, I mean, you definitely lean on that training, but you're like, it doesn't do it justice, right?
No, not at all. And I was like I was new radio systems. I knew how to talk, things like that. But like even still, like fielding calls from the public, or even like we talked about, you don't know what goes on. I didn't realize how many car accidents went on at any single time in the day. Like it was just mind blowing to know just how many calls for service were always happening.
It's one of the most interesting jobs, I think, because you also get to see um like the chaos, like every day, like stuff that you see in the news, or just stuff that people don't even realize that is going on every day, every other hour, that throughout the day. And I saw a meme recently that said something to the effect of like Scooby-Doo, like the show Scooby-Doo, that the one thing that it taught us was that monsters are real and that they're all human. And I thought, damn, that is true. That is deep.
Right.
Like you think about that cartoon and everybody they're chasing, they're like monsters or ghosts, but they end up being humans. and
Yeah.
and in 911, all of these calls that you take, you get to see some of those harder calls where these folks, like this horrific shit that happens, they're people, they're humans, that are doing this. And it's stuff that you can't make up, and stuff that you don't always realize that is going on. So I think that's why it hits us really hard sometimes. Now, Tom, for you, getting started and everything, having your sister Erin involved, and being there for so many years already, and kind of preparing you for some of this stuff. Either way, did you get a chance yourself to do a sit along, or it was just basically going off of what Erin was telling you?
It was basically going off what she was telling me. And while I'm going through training,
Hmm.
I'm pretty confident in myself. I think very highly of my abilities. I'm a quick learner. But like there's such a steep learning curve in the beginning to learn the new place, learn the new system, streets I didn't know, landmarks, all. So it was uh, a lot of information all at once, info dump. So I would have my 8 hour work day, and then on the ride home, I'd just be and like asking this or going over this situation, and then so I had extra time to catch me up. So I was very fortunate.
Oh, that is awesome. But also to have your sister to be able to, have someone to talk through, with a lot
Right.
of that stuff. Because I remember in the beginning when I was going through, I mean, I almost quit. I almost quit in the training process, and the center that in the county that I grew up in, because going through it, what I didn't know in the beginning, like they didn't tell me you're going to be with your trainer and nobody's going to talk to you.
Right.
Me coming into this profession and the way we're all supposed to work together, I was thinking that I was going to go in, people are going to be like, "Hey man, welcome to the team," and it was going to be like family already, and working together and learning how each other works, and it was not like that at all. And so I you get that feeling of isolation, right? And you don't, should I be here? Do these people want me here? Like, I don't know, and I don't know how it was for the both of you, but that's the way it was for me in the beginning. And one of the girls that I worked with, she was actually a girl that I grew up with and went to school with, and she graduated a year before me. But it was just kind of funny that years later we would end up working together in dispatch.
Mhm.
And she told me, because I told her, I said, "I'm going to quit, man." And she's like, "No, no, no, no. Why?" And then I told her what I was telling you and how I felt and stuff. She goes, "I'm so sorry. This is just the way it is. This is how they do things. When you get to that fourth stage, that last stage, the shadow phase, that's when we all work as a team, and all this other stuff." And I remember saying to her, like, "This shit needs to change." I said, because I almost quit, man. I said, "I didn't know you guys do this." So she actually ended up becoming the training coordinator a few years after I was done with training, and all of it is different now. And I'm not saying it was just because of what happened to me. I'm sure there was a lot of other things. Like, she wanted to make change, and she's done an amazing job there. So it's a lot different. But in the beginning, you don't really have a lot of people to lean on. So for
Mhm.
you, I mean, I'm jealous because you had your sister there, and the both of you could be able to talk about certain things because you both know what's going on, and you're
Hmm.
both coming from the same place.
It was I don't think similar going through it, especially because I was in a different squad from her, so I didn't work with her
Hmm.
at the time. I was being trained in some with someone else, and I wasn't getting a lot of feedback. I wasn't getting a lot of information, and I knew they knew because I had first hand experience that this is what dispatchers do. This is how it should operate. So it was the walking in, realizing not everybody's the same. Everybody functions a little different, and trying to adjust to their personality, their style. And then luckily I had someone being like, just get through it. Don't worry. This is training. Just get through it. And it'll be different. So that helped me get through as
Yeah, see, and that's good that there was somebody there, just like me. However, had I not asked, it might not have been the same. So I'm glad I asked. But for you, you had somebody that was there that said, just get through it. Everything will be good. Just keep going and going. And I think a lot of that stuff has changed now, because especially, I mean, even then when I was in dispatch, we were short staffed. So now, I mean,
Right.
everyone is short staffed even more so. And I keep telling people, like, you want people to stay. You want to welcome them in, but sometimes see on social media in the private groups where someone goes, "Hey, I'm getting ready to take my test. I hope I pass this test, and I want to be doing what you guys are doing. Do you have any advice?" And there's always a lot of people who give good advice, but there's always the few that end up saying, "Run."
well. Right.
I'm like, "What?" Like, I get you're joking around, but they might not take it like that, and we want people to stay. We want people to
Yep.
work there, right?
Right.
We need the bodies. Like, come on.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, man. So, getting into now more so, the beginning of this. So going back to Erin now, you get hired, you get in there, you're going through the training and everything. Do you remember your first call or maybe some of your earlier calls?
Not really. Like I can remember the big difference between Milford and Stamford.
Mhm.
And so Milford, because we weren't an all civilian dispatch, you also did work in there with a cop that you got more like criminal guidance and like statute guidance. Um, and it was more of like just short, sweet to the point. Like Milford kind of on top of the fact that their old computer system was that old DOS style system. So
Oh,
like the black screen, green writing. So
yes.
you had very limited amount of space to write in the call. So they wanted like two sentences. That's it, like all abbreviated. In Stamford, I went in not confident because I didn't even know Stamford was a city in Connecticut until I
Mhm.
applied for the place. And I walk in, they're all civilian. They do police, fire, and EMS. So that's intimidating in itself. But they wanted you to do a little bit more, like ask a couple more questions. And that was also a hard adjustment. So it's not so much that I remember like the first call or anything, just the those psychs from because every town's got a handful of the regulars. They were just
Right.
that was kind of the eye opening for me. Like, okay, so every town's got one. They just have a different name.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, no, I fully, agree with you, and I feel you. I know exactly what you mean because when I first started out in the smaller police department in Central Florida, it was the same thing. Everything was short and sweet. 911 calls would come in. We didn't do medicals. Like, we dispatched for fire rescue, but we didn't dispatch for EMS or anything like that, and it was just fire and, and law enforcement. Every time we had a 911 call that would come in that was a medical, we would just get the pertinent information and then transfer over to what they called county radio, which was just
Mhm.
central dispatch, because they did all of the medical dispatching there. They did the emergency medical dispatch, EMD, and such. So I didn't have to do any of that, but and the call volume was completely different as well,
Mhm.
and some of the types of calls too. And I don't know if it was because it was a smaller city that maybe people didn't call as much, or they didn't want to call because they were doing their own thing. But but when I ended up going back to Michigan and working for Central Dispatch, then it was all different. I mean, there were three of us on
Mhm.
the floor. It was three minimum, and we were working 12 hours. And we were doing police, fire, and EMS. The call volume was way up, well, way up more, compared to the small
Mhm.
police department, and it was just completely different, and
Mhm.
sometimes overwhelming. And you're like, damn. Am I going to be able to do
Yep.
this?
It really is like apples to oranges. Like everyone
Hmm.
thinks that dispatch is the same, but it is, each department is completely different than the other one.
Yeah, and especially if you're working in a big area where you also have not only the sheriff's department, but you also have state police. So,
Hmm.
like for us, I mean, it was not completely the same, but it was kind of like Super Troopers.
Nice.
Yeah, because we've got the AVLs, the what is it, automatic vehicle locators, so we can see where everyone is at. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember, putting out a call, and like the state would say, "Well, where's the sheriff's department at?" And they would say, "Well, we can see where you're at, and you're closer than we are." And I'm just sitting there on radio, like, "Okay, am I not? Have I been plucked out of my position here to tell whoever to go because now they're going at each other?"
Yeah.
Oh, but it was always fun. I mean, it was fun either way. But yeah, that whole dynamic and everything, it was just always interesting between the
Hmm.
smaller department versus the bigger one, the types of calls, and like you said, like the regulars, the frequent flyers that would call in
Yeah.
and say certain things, and you're like, okay, we'll send somebody out, and we'll do whatever. Um, Tom, for you going in now, Erin started at one place and then ended up at another, and then you ended up where she's at as well. So for you in the beginning, going through training and everything else, like, was there anything that you felt that was, a little overwhelming, or something, something to that effect in the different positions that you were working in? Now, the reason I ask is because when I was training on radios, it would get to the point sometimes where I would look at my trainer, like the response would just have to be 10-4. But because I wanted to do such a good job, I would second guess what I was going to say. So I would turn and look and say, it's just a 10-4, right? 10-4. That's all I need to say. and the trainer would go, yeah, Ricardo, just 10-4. I'm like, okay. I was like, I just want to make sure I'm saying it right. And they would say, if you say something wrong, they're going to give you shit, but it'll be okay. So how was it
Yeah.
for you, Tom?
So the beginning, we do it in an order. So I was learning phones at first. So I just remember how difficult, like in my head, in theory, call taking is so easy. I'm going to ask you what you need. I'm going to take down your contact information and done deal. I'm going to on to the next.
Mhm.
But in practice, trying to get information, people who might be emotional, who might be distracted, who might be arguing with someone right next to them, it really, like the first couple calls, I just realized like, oh, okay, like this isn't going to be as simple as what this piece of paper right next to me says. Like you're going to actually have to work at this, like get it done. And then picking up the nonverbal clues using, locations, trying to figure out what they're saying to people in the background, and then trying to put all of that. So not literally what they're saying, because sometimes people say I'm robbed, where they mean someone stole something or they got hacked. So
Mhm.
every now and then you have to translate from the public into whether it's law enforcement speak or EMS or fire. You have to make it so that they can understand. So that was the overwhelming part. Is this is what they're telling me, so I'm going to put it in. But then I was wrong because the guy in the back was like, "Well, no, even though they said that, you should have known better." Like, oh, okay, my bad. I should have known better. So that was interesting. And then moving on to the radios, like you said, when the first car accident, and he's like, "Hey, I have 6 ops to run," and he reads all 6 of them at once, and I have no idea what he's even saying, because then they're using terms like the same word in 4 different terms. It's a DL, it's an op, it's a light, like, and I couldn't put all that together. So I'm thinking these are maybe 4 different things. Oh no, it's all the same thing.
you are you are exactly correct, because yeah, there's one thing that can have 4 different meanings, and you're just there like, oh, okay, all right, I'll try to figure it out. But also, you make a good point. When someone calls in, you made me flash back and really think about this when you said, somebody calls in and they say they've been robbed. you know I can be a caller and say, I just got robbed right now, and it turns out I was just looking at my phone app for the bank, and
Right.
like you said, something got hacked, and I'm yelling, I just got robbed, because
Hmm.
I'm freaking out about what happened. But you, being the call taker, is probably typing it in really fast, and everybody can hear you typing hard and fast, and like, oh shit, Tom's got something that's
Right.
coming over. It's like, this dude just got robbed. But then it turns out to be that. Yeah, that you're right. That's definitely something, you have to decipher what it is going on, but you got to do it so fast. And
Exactly.
it's the same thing like with the different meanings of a driver's license. It's also the same thing with, the robbery or something that's going on.
Yep.
And that was pretty much the overall job concept, or like we talked about earlier about knowing what's going on, or maybe
Mhm.
the media isn't relaying the full picture. A lot of it is because we didn't know what was going on at the time. Yeah, we responded for a situation, and then when we got there, we found out it's a completely different situation. Like we didn't know though. So sure, the newspaper says, "Hey, 8 cops pulled over this car." Be like, yeah, it might have been a little bit more than that though, but okay, you're not wrong, but you're kind of wrong.
Yes, but especially when they end up pulling audio. Sometimes there have been a few times when I was working in dispatch and they pulled audio from our center. I would listen to it and I would think, now they must have cut it up and then added those pieces together, because that audio, like there's a chunk missing, because there would be, a lot of times, when audio ends up hitting the news or something, it's because dispatch did something wrong, right? Or officers did
Right.
something wrong or whatever. But I remember one, and I won't go into a lot of detail, but I'll just say this. I remember one specific call where I was reading the story and I thought, okay, that's kind of what happened. And then I was listening to the audio and I thought, that is not what happened. There's a huge chunk missing that you need to play so that people aren't giving us crap, because we didn't do anything wrong. And yeah, but what are you gonna do? Like I can't call the news station and be like, hey, you need to do something different, because that's not how it went down. I mean, I can tell them all I want, and they'll be like, hey, we put it out. What do you want us to do? It's crazy.
File a
But
complaint online. Yep.
yeah, yeah, because you see all of those comments. In this specific call, I ended up commenting anonymously, of course. I ended up commenting and I said, this is not how it happened. There's a section that's missing that would show that it took 2 hours for that person to call us. And after that, all the comments stopped. Like nobody said anything anymore, and they had to they ended up switching the news story. But I was like, well, let's just show you what's up. You're not going to take us down. This is dispatch, yo. We'll show you exactly what happened. Oh gosh, yeah. No, it's crazy for sure. Now, what about and of course this is only if you feel comfortable, but what about a call that sticks with you? And the reason I ask is because, these are the types of calls that of course the general public wants to know what it's really like for us when we're taking these calls, but more importantly, for other dispatchers and call takers that listen to this podcast, when they hear about some of these harder calls, um, not only do they learn from it, but sometimes a lot of them end up feeling like they're not alone. Because, like in the beginning, I felt like I was alone. I felt like I'm the only one that's probably dealing with these types of calls, because we didn't talk about a lot of this stuff at work. Nobody wanted to look weak. We didn't want to look like we were the ones who couldn't take it just because we were asking for help. And, for me, I used to bury those calls, but and it screwed me up, but once I started talking about a lot of these calls and sharing these stories, it was therapeutic. And the more I talked about them, the more others talked about them. So that's why I ask about, a call that sticks with you. Because like for me, when I was in dispatch in the last center, 2007, when my grandmother passed away, I was the one who took that call. And it was like, what are the odds? What are the odds that I would have been the one to take that call? And I feel like for a lot of us, some of the calls that we end up taking, they were meant for us in a way, especially if we have prior experience that kind of relates to whatever the situation is that the caller is calling in about. We have that experience to be able to help them better and relate to them, where someone else who doesn't have that experience might not be able to help them in a way that I would, because I have that experience. So Erin, I want to start with you. What do you have a call that kind of sticks with you?
So I have two. I actually have one that stuck with me. It happened to be Thanksgiving, and I got the call from the wife that the husband hung himself.
Mhm.
And the reason why it sticks with me isn't so much about the hanging part itself. It's that as I'm trying to give her CPR instructions, because we don't know how long he's there, we're trying to see if he's, she said she was only on for 45 minutes. So we were trying to get him help. But it was the fact that her kids knew something was going on and were trying to come upstairs, and she's just screaming at them to not come upstairs. So that's more why that one sticks with me, because I felt for the kids. I felt really bad for the kids. Like, here they are, they could tell something up with mom. They're trying to go upstairs. I don't know how old they are, but they're just going upstairs, and mom is just begging, like pleading with them not to come upstairs. And that's why I remember that one. It just happened to be on Thanksgiving, but it was just for the kids. Like, it's one of those where you feel helpless. Like, you want to be the one to go over there and keep the kids downstairs. Like, not so much about trying to help her with the CPR, like, just keep the kids away from this. They don't need to see this.
Right. Yeah. Those are some of the ones that I would say, are the most hard calls, whether you have kids or not. Ones that involve kids, even if they're, and this is going to sound bad, but kind of a side note to what exactly is going on, right? Like you said, you want to kind of reach through and either hold them or keep them from seeing whatever it is that is going on, because that's, that's going to affect them later on, not just yourself listening to all of that, but thinking about them. And I think one of the hardest things, and good things in a sense too, for us, is that we're empaths. So in order to do this job well, you have to be human. You have to put yourself in their shoes to be able to relate. The hard thing later on is that it ends up sticking with us. But I feel that the more we share, the easier it is to be able to maneuver or handle whatever came with it beforehand. What was the other call that you mentioned?
So the other one is not nearly as serious. It just stuck with me because I wasn't ready. So you get to be prepared for all these calls. So I'm taking a call from a guy who was actually robbed. Like, he actually was in the park and was mugged and was robbed. So I'm getting all the information from him. I'm getting a description of the guy, which direction they went, what weapons they used. Cops are on their way, the whole thing. EMS is on their way to stand by for him. And what I wasn't prepared for was, because he's in the middle of a park, I asked him what he was wearing so the cops would know who to go up to. And he said a pink dress. And I was not prepared for that to be the answer.
Right.
So I kind of I love to watch Kevin Hart, but I kind of pulled the whole Kevin Hart where I'm like, so you're wearing a pink dress. Like, right now I can tell the officers you're wearing a pink dress. Like, I confirmed that with him 3 times, but then it made me forget. I had more questions and I forgot what all they were, like what every other question was supposed to be.
Right.
Because I was not prepared for a pink dress. Like, I just wasn't ready for that to be the answer when I'm asking you what you're wearing.
Yeah, because for everyone who's watching and listening, because of the fact that we don't see what is going on, whatever we hear, we are piecing that puzzle together in our brain to be able to translate that in CAD, whatever we're typing, or even yelling over if we're close enough to main radio, so that the folks that are going out there in the field know exactly what it is going on. Exactly. So you're piecing this entire story together, and then you get that. So I'm listening to you tell this story, and when you said that, in my head it was like bing. I was like, no way.
Yep. I know I had about 5 more questions to ask him. I don't remember what they were supposed to be. Luckily, the cops were just pulling up on scene, but all of my training went right out the window. Right. I got the curveball thrown at me and I wasn't ready for it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Like I immediately think of, Princess Toadstool from from Super Mario Brothers.
Yep.
Oh,
it's 100% awesome. Where my brain went.
Yeah. Again, it's an interesting thing with this profession, that there's a lot of shit that you can't make up. And when someone calls in like that and gives a description that way, I mean, it also makes it a lot easier for the officers to get out there and find the caller. There's something that I always wanted to do. I never did it because, of course, we got to stay professional. But there was one time Well, it was multiple times that this happened, but this is the one thing that I wanted to do and never did. But in the area where I was working, there's a lot of state game area and just rural areas and everything else where people go and they hunt. So there would be some times that people would call in a BOL or a BOLO, be on the lookout for a person who is walking on the side of the road with a rifle and dressed in hunting gear, dressed in camouflage. And I always wanted to say, how do you see them? How? Because the camouflage is supposed to mask them from being seen. So I always wanted to say, how do you know that it's a male or a female? Like, how can you tell? Like, how can you actually see them? Shouldn't the gun just be floating by itself?
Just a possessed gun floating down the side.
Right. Yes, exactly. But again, we don't say shit like that. But it was always in the back of my head, like, how do you see them? Just being a smart ass and everything. Now, Tom, how about you? You've been there, working and everything else. You've been there for about 4 years now, right? So in that time and all, are there any calls that have stuck with you?
There definitely are. It's just the first couple too. It's just truly hard to talk to emotional people. Like that was probably some of the hardest part. But for me, as like just my own mindset changed for 2 calls. They weren't too serious, but I changed the way I approached calls most of the time. That I usually try to be really efficient when I'm picking up the phone. I'm really trying to get to what this is about, get to the gist of it, and then move on because they're just nonstop. 100 calls a shift plus per person. So I'm getting a call. This is a young gentleman. He already sounds pretty sad. It's a routine line. I'm asking how I can help him. He's saying, he had property that was taken. It was very important to him. I'm just his contact information. And then right when he was talking to me, he just stopped and he goes, "You know what, man, you don't even care." And I remember like really thinking in my head, because he called me out in that moment, because he was giving me information. I wasn't reacting to almost anything that he was hoping for reactions for. I was again just being cold, I guess, and just trying to get the core. And when he said that, like it kind of did shake me out of it, being like, this is a human being on the other line. Like, even though I can't help him, there maybe I can give him some solace by, hey, sorry that happened to you today. You're right. I can't do much for you, but in the future, maybe X, Y, or Z, or, try calling these numbers. Maybe they can help you out too. And I try to not go an extra mile, but, you don't have to immediately be like, oh, not my problem. That's I'm not saying that's what I was doing, but it did kind of open up my mind to be as helpful as you can for everyone as much as you can. Another call, though, this was a 911 call. Annie Alley pings, the very, very northern edge of Stamford. And it's actually pinging on the map in a pool. And I remember just looking up on the map being like, wow, that's kind of crazy. And it's a guy and he's speaking, 10 miles a minute. I'm managing to write it all down, but our policy specifically for EMD is you got to ask the location twice. So he gave me the location. I get the rest of the information. I then ask him for the location a second time to verify. And I just remember him, absolutely snapping because unfortunately his son was in a pool, was drowning. He's now out of the pool, breathing, coughing in the background. But the father was just so upset about the second verification for the address. And it was one of those, I almost got defensive, like I'm trying to do my job. Like I'm, at this point I get your son's was in danger. He's not in emergency right now, but that little bit of personal attack, made my defenses go up a little bit. And then, you got to relax. Like this job, these people are the worst moments of their life. These guys are going through so much and they don't even know who you are. Honestly, you are nothing to them. And that's a good thing. But so I remember being like, from now on, everything just rolls right off. I'm oiled. I really don't care what you're saying to me. Now I'm just like we talked about earlier too, laugh or cry. Like I'm not going to laugh on the phone, but I'm going to hang up after and I'm probably going to laugh if you insulted me for 10 minutes. Because what are you doing with your time if you have that much time to call me?
Yeah, those types of calls, I fully agree. Those are ones that end up making you kind of rethink how you're doing things, how your tone went over exactly how you said. But especially if someone is just like going off on you and you just got to take it. You just got to take it like raw dog. You just got to take it. There is no lube, but you are just going to take what it is. And
you take the headset out a little bit, give you some space. Everyone around you can hear it. You're like, yep, I got it.
Yes. So I remember so my headset, it didn't have the second one. It was just a piece that would rest on the side, and I would move the mouthpiece up and I would cover my mouth and chuckle sometimes because there was nothing else I could do. And I would think, okay, well, I'm just going to let this person get it out. Obviously, they needed to get it out. I'd rather them yell at me than someone else and someone get killed or just something injured or whatever. So I just go ahead and take it and then get off the phone. And I'm just, all right, ring. Okay, next one.
Yep.
Oh man, yeah. But we end up you end up learning, right, with every single call, different ways to respond to different folks, and you can tell by their tone, and you realize, or even with like kids, you end up bringing the voice down to a more like comfortable tone, and you're talking to them, you're being firm, but you're also giving instruction. And I think what I love about taking calls from kids is they listen and they do everything that you say. They're the best people to call.
The best.
Yes. Adults, man, because everybody wants to be in control, right? But especially when it's a high priority call and the adrenaline levels are up here, sometimes you can't get through to folks when they're calling in and they're just hysterical and they're just going off and going off, and then you just got to kind of bring your voice down to a whisper to kind of trick them, to make them think that there's nobody there, and then they say, oh, I'm sorry, is somebody there? Yes, give me your address, and then you jump in and you start going. That was a little trick that they taught me early on when I was in dispatch, and it always worked, but man, sometimes it was like pulling teeth.
Yes.
Yep.
Or when they're purposely being like, there's someone banging on my door. Do you know who they are? Yes. Well, who are they? A guy. Like, do you want me to ask a fourth time? Like, who is it?
Yes. Yeah, for real. They're like, it's a friend of mine. Oh, okay. Can you tell me what the person's name is? Well, I mean, yeah, but no. Like, we've got help going your way, but I need all this other information as well.
It's the same thing trying to get the address. Like you answer, what's the address of your emergency? Stamford. Okay, where in Stamford? Over here. Over here where? They're like, well, I'm at home. What is your address? Like,
Oh, right. Yeah, I'm on Bob's Road. Do you know Bob's Road? No, I don't. I'm not sure where Bob's Road is. Okay, well, it's by Jack's tree as well as Jason's building. I'm like, I don't. I need some other information here. But and I that's why I love having conversations like this as well, because a lot of the general public listens to this show, and I've gotten a lot of emails where people are like, I understand now what it is that you're looking for, because that's what you need. That's what you need to get people to help me out. And now I know. I had a friend that I went to high school with once who sent me a message, and he said, dude, I'm going to tell, and this was when I very first started doing this. And so it was very early on, episodes like 5 or 6 or something like that. And he sent me a message saying, I now understand. And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, well, I was in an accident recently. He goes, it was just a fender bender. He goes, but I called 911. I was shook up and they put me on hold. They put me on hold, man. And I got pissed off. But now, after listening to a few episodes, I realize my emergency isn't the only emergency. And if they're putting me on hold, there's a reason for it. So thank you. Keep doing what you're doing, because we are learning from this as well. So us having this conversation and those questions and stuff like that, it's perfect. So
oh, yes. The one thing I would love for the public to realize is that we're not one big central station in Kansas. Like, each department is different. I'm convinced that the public thinks that there's just one massive central 911 center in the smack dab middle of the country, and we can send you anywhere and everywhere and can get all, like, no. If you called 911 in Stamford, you're getting Stamford. If you need California, I can try to send you over there, but I don't have California numbers.
Right. Yeah. It's like, gotta bust out Google. Like, you gotta look it up. Yeah, if you have some even minimal information, sometimes we can get it out there, because it's when I was in dispatch, we had something that we called FM. So the officers would say, they would ask us, how did you do that? And we would say, well, it's FM. And they would say, what does that mean? And I'd say, it's fucking magic. Like, that's how we do it. Like, we
Nice. I'm
just
stealing that just
do
so
it.
you know.
Go for it. Yes, please do. So I want to segue now that we've found out, a lot more about the both of you and, your start and some of the calls that you've taken and everything else. There is a water rescue story that I want to get into. Now, this was Easter Sunday, and this was actually just around this past April that this happened, April of this year. And the both of you were working on this call. This was a multi-agency response, and it had to do with, I think, 4 different boaters that were in the water. So if you can talk me through this, what exactly happened in this incident?
So Easter Sunday, and this day was actually a little extra special because we managed to get breakfast brought to us every year, I guess. The community does breakfast. We had dispatchers physically attend the year prior.
Mm-hmm.
We, dispatch sometimes is the forgotten agency, so fire will get it delivered to them, EMS will get it delivered to them, police will get it delivered to them. We never did. So this was the year that they went out of their way. Hey, let's not forget dispatch. Get them some steaks in it. So,
oh, of course, the first time.
Yep.
So gets there about 10 o'clock. Everybody's mouth is full. Everybody's digging in. We're having a pretty good morning. Not too bad so far. One innocent phone call, one little 911 ring, but just one phone call. So usually it's kind of peaceful, only one ring. So you go. I went to go answer it. The first thing I usually do is look at the number and check the map just to find out a general idea of probably what's going to be happening, and then our opening, which is the Stamford 911 with the address of emergency, and immediately lady speaking, Spanish speaking. I don't speak Spanish myself, and I'm like, okay, and you could just hear in her voice like this is. So I didn't even waste any time. I'm immediately getting buoyants on, pumping it in the PIN code, and her on the line. Translator, I will say, just like every other human being, there's different qualities. Very fortunate that this morning happened to be a great translator. Immediately say, hey, say you're Stamford 911. What's the emergency? And right away goes, my husband's drowning. A boat is sinking. And I'm looking at the map and I'm seeing her well inland. And I'm like, I'm confirming, kind of like the pink dress, like, wait, a boat is in distress. It's sinking right now in this moment. Yes. How do you know this? My husband called me. Was he on the boat? Yes. And I'm like, okay. And like, when did you just to him? Right now. So now in this moment, it's one of those, you don't even have time to type up all the information that I just had. So it's just like typing in a location near the water because the map doesn't exactly pinpoint water itself. So I just have to pick, a street by the water and then, or I think a beach, and then just send, the code over. The police and fire get it. And, screaming through the room, everything I have. Like, hey, Spanish speaking lady, she's driving over. She's on the phone with her husband somehow. I still don't even know how. And she says, he's sinking in this very moment. Start getting people over there. Get a Spanish speaker. Like, put all hands on deck. This just went from 0 to 100 within this 30-second call. Luckily, one of the things I asked was, how are you getting this information? She said, I'm talking to him through the phone. So I got the phone number. And, dispatch, my brief time so far, but realized, why isn't he calling in? That's usually, some type of flag is why isn't this person calling? I did ask her that. She said something about he tried. So we're like, okay, we're going to attempt to call him, but I wanted to keep her on the phone. But at least his phone number's in the call. There's other of us in the room. And then that's when Erin took over from fire dispatch.
So what I love to say about his, though, because he confirmed it, the entire room heard him say the word boat. So then the entire room went, oh God, he just said boat. So we know boat rescues are not easy. They are pure chaos. So we enjoyed the 30 seconds prior to this. We did start singing on a boat, but that's because we legit had, about 20 to 30 seconds before all hell was about to break loose. So the call comes over, we see it, and we have Carbyne, as you know. So Tommy, like he said, was smart enough to get the phone number. Mm-hmm. So I knew it was Spanish speaking. So Carbyne can do video, but can also do chat. So I opened up Google Translate and I go to use Carbyne with his phone number because I'm actually thinking maybe the only reason why he didn't call us is because he's Spanish speaking and he decided to call his wife instead. So when I put in the phone, I was using Google Translate to send him messages, thinking if he's on the phone, maybe he'll get these and can tell us a little bit more accurate where he is. Well, he did try to call 911 for a brief second, but hung up. So it never connected, or the service dropped, whatever happened. So after that is when he called his wife, who then Tommy got. So by putting in his phone number, it pinged him, the last known location of the phone, and it was smack dab in the middle of the water. So we already had fire and rescue and police and everybody going. Fire is fortunate enough that they always have boat operators. So they're not on the boat patrolling the water 24/7, but they always have a boat at the marina dock, and they always have boat operators working. So you send that engine over to the boat, they get on the boat, and then they go search the water. So the good news was that I was then trying to tell the incident commander, because I'm looking at Carbyne and I'm telling him, it's due south of this point and due east of this point, because I was telling him the lat and long, but he didn't have something to just easily put it into. So he asked me, where do those coordinates come up to? So I gave him the due south of here, the due east of here. I go, if you cross those lines, that's exactly where it's pinning. So they were already out on the water for a couple of minutes before I relayed them this information. And then when I did, they kind of narrowed in and went to where the spot was. And that's when they started to find debris from the boat. So the boat was already gone at this point. The boat was already sunk. These four guys, and we only knew it as one person because we got it and just knew of the husband.
Right.
So then while they're out there searching, it was, okay, maybe it's two people. The husband went out with a friend. And then they're searching in this area, and I remember them confirming, was there a blue cooler with a white top? Yes, that's what the wife is saying. So they started to find the debris from the boat floating, and the cooler was actually floating higher than their heads were because it was also choppy. So you looking at the water, you couldn't see them because the waves were higher than they were, but they came and pinpointed to this area and found this debris from the boat and then ended up finding the occupants, and it turned out to be 4. So from 1 to 2 to 4 people total.
Jeez. Okay, so listening to the both of you, I'm at the edge of my seat here, literally. So they found them out there. Were they able to to successfully get them out and everything? Like, did you all find out what had happened? Because in dispatch, one of the things that we deal with is the fact that there's no closure. So for this call specifically, what was the end result?
So we still don't know what made the boat sink. That's the only thing that we don't know. But this is where it turned into multi-agency because we also had Darien responding because it was close to their border. So we had Stamford police boat in the water. Stamford Fire sent out 2 boats, their regular boat and their Zodiac, and Darien sent out their boat. They ended up pulling all 4 out of the water. 3, or I believe 2 got transported to hospital and 2 to hospital. But the update that we got were 2 did not survive. 2 were in full cardiac arrest when they pulled them out of the water, and they were doing CPR on them on the boat, trying to resuscitate them, driving back inland. The husband actually was one of the fortunate ones. He was one of the only ones, the most alert, which also made sense because he's the one who called for help. But the other 2 were completely unconscious. One was semi-conscious, and this husband of the original caller was the most alert to be able to tell anything. But from what we were told, 2 did not survive, but 2 did.
Wow. And just the fact that 2 did survive and everything, the fact that you had that location to be able to get the boats out there in that right area, that's huge. Because years ago, not having that, like, what would you be able to do? You'd be lucky if you could possibly get some sort of triangulation or a phase 2 or something like that. And even with a phase 2 in the water, like, that's a hard thing. But the fact that you had things in place to be able to get and pinpoint where they were at and everything, that is just big. So with that alone, let me ask, for the both of you, for that alone, having the ability to be able to track that location and get people out there, what is that? How does that feel, for the both of you?
Carbyne, I think, is huge, or just the location. One of the things I learned early on was the order you ask the questions. So I had a trainer who was like, ask for the phone number first on the 911. And then I had advice being like, actually get the location first. Because at the end of the day, the location is really the most important thing. We can send everybody, when in doubt, roll them out, but they need to know where to go. So to have a tool that can give us the location when, and I had I had the buoyants, we had the boats, we had everything else we needed to, but that was the key that got them out. Like nothing else would have done that.
Right, especially because I think they were legitimately looking for a boat. I think that was the hard part because it was relayed to us as if like the boat was, trouble or sinking or something, but not that the boat was actually gone.
Right, already submerged by the time any of us even got there.
Yep. So that was the nice part with Carbyne, like he's saying, is the location is it was such a high like pinpoint accuracy instead of like you were saying, like phase 2 might be meters. They go, oh, here's the point, but it might be, 50 meters from this point. Well, 50 meters on the water and land is a lot of ground to cover.
Right.
Whereas Carbyne was like, no, this is the last known location where the phone was like Latin long, like specific. This is the last location where it was known. And that was huge in being able to save anybody because they were up until that point just doing circles in the water and were not locating these victims. So Carbyne was huge in the fact of even being able to rescue 2 of the 4 people.
Wow. That is amazing because, like I said, years ago, you wouldn't be able to have that. And like you said, the fact that they were looking for a boat and the boat was already gone, in other cases, they might have gone out there, not seen the boat or anything and thought, oh, everybody is gone, yet they're still there. You just couldn't see them. So, what a story. So as we go into the wrap up of this episode, and we're on this topic of the technology and everything, for you, Erin, because you've been in this profession a bit longer, how has the technology changed, and I guess how has it changed for the better, in your opinion?
It's both good and bad. So technology has absolutely changed. The absolute access to be able to call 911 from anywhere and not just a payphone or a landline is huge. Because up until cell phones were this prominent, or up until cell phones with the free minutes, so people didn't want to make phone calls, at 2 p.m, you wouldn't get the information till well after the fact. Like something would happen to them at a store and then they would drive all the way home and then call you. So now we're, 30 minutes to an hour delayed from when the incident took place. So I do enjoy the like right now aspect of it, but I also think it's hindering people because it's great for as far as us on dispatch, but people are now like we are getting flooded with calls. So it used to be, an accident and someone who happened to work or live near where the accident, you get 1 or 2 phone calls. Now you get an accident and we're getting 30 phone calls for the same accident and we can't even keep up with them because everybody's calling. So it's a good and bad thing. It helps us pinpoint you quicker. The accuracy is better, but it's also inundating us with just like an overwhelming amount of stuff.
For sure. Yeah. Everyone has a smartphone, right? And everyone wants to make sure that information is getting in there, which is good, but also bad in the sense if you don't have enough call takers and they're just coming in, you're like, oh man. And then, eventually the other center, whoever is your backup, they start getting flooded with it as well. And you start taking transfers of those calls and it's just an endless loop. But you're right. No, I agree. There's good and bad to to the technology that is coming in. And a lot of it has been pretty good, especially, with the story that you shared as well, the both of you. Tom, for you, in the time that you've been in this profession and everything that you've learned up until now, if you could go back in time to when you started in the beginning, what advice would you give yourself?
Probably just, take a breath. I think I was a little too high strung coming in right away, especially like on main radio. I'm for 8 hours, I'm practically with my ear up to the speaker, just like, okay, wait, where's it coming? Like I no off switch, no relax switch. So it was 8 hours of on. And then when I'm going home for the day, such a stress headache because I didn't, drink enough water for 8 hours. I just literally just sat there staring at the screen. But now it's more you can read the room, listen to what the call takers are saying, listen to what the city might be going on today, anticipate, and you got to be extra alert and when you maybe, dial it down a bit. So that, and just, everyone has something to teach you as well. Like delivery in this profession is a little rough. I would say a lot of people have some personality, but everybody has useful advice too.
Perfect. Well, thank you both very, very much for being on this episode. This was a lot of fun. It was great to learn about the both of you, but especially to be sharing this water rescue story as well. Thank you for the job that you do. And I appreciate it. Thank you for being on.
Thank you.
So I will be right back here with you in just one moment. And for those who are watching and listening, if you have any comments, questions, or you want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that's going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter. That is @91podcast. You can like us on Facebook. That is facebook.com/Within the Trenches podcast. This episode has been sponsored by InDigital, Rapid Deploy, as well as Carbyne. And this was an exclusive Carbyne episode. Patrons, thank you so much for everything. If you want to be a patron and help support us, you can hook us up here, patreon.com/WTT podcast. There's early episodes, discounts to the store, bonus material, and audio versions for you only of the DRT, as well as Open Mic Live. Again, patreon.com/WTT podcast. This can be seen on Facebook, YouTube, as well as Twitter. And then you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.